WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Fourth and Goal podcast, WVUA 90.7, the Capstones podcast for all things college football. I'm Caden Johnson, joined by my co-hosts Braden Freedman and Nicholas Elliot. Now, just like last episode, we know the college football season is over, but we've still got many things to cover. There's still plenty of content going around, and the offseason has kept us pretty entertained so far. So today we're going to be covering the transfer portal, how we feel about it, some of the players that have transferred around, and we're going to get into the coaching carousel a little bit and talk about what hires we liked, what hires we didn't like. But first off, guys, college football season's over, so that kind of frees up the Saturdays a little bit. How are you guys spending your weekends now?
No comment.
Yeah, I would say just switching over to college basketball.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in the college basketball mindset. Now, I know there's the startup football leagues. We have like the XFL and then the USFL returning later. Have you guys tuned into any XFL games?
I've watched a few XFL games. I've seen a few highlights. I love that The Rock is kind of the main guy in the XFL, and who doesn't like The Rock?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, it's exciting, but it's also a lot of middle-tier performances. But there's a lot of excitement around three-point conversions, and that's a weird thing to see that we're only used to seeing on Madden in the yard.
Exactly, yeah.
It's a cool idea. It's football in the spring. It's 7-on-7. Maybe there'll be an XFL 7-on-7
That would
league.
be cool too, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're listening, Rock, that's your moneymaker right there.
There it is right there. Braden Freedman with $1 million idea. So we're going to get on topic here a little bit. We're going to start off with the transfer portal today. Whoever wants to answer first. How do you guys feel about the transfer portal, and how do you feel it's impacted college football?
Well, I mean, the transfer portal is probably the biggest talk and the main reason why a lot of teams that came out of nowhere this year are where they are. I mean, it's just so many kids come out of high school and they want to play for Alabama or Georgia or, USC, the schools that are in everyone's mind, the top schools, the most historically winning schools. That's where everyone wants to play for. But there's only 11 spots on offense, 11 spots on defense, 11 spots on special teams, and about 150 kids, 100 kids that show up to training camp. And sometimes it doesn't work out, and that's where you see kids transferring. And I think it's great. It gives people a second chance. I don't know if people should really be getting a third chance, but I totally think that people should be allowed to transfer, and I think it's impacted the game positively.
Yeah, I agree. I love the transfer portal. It just makes college football more, like year-round, because you'll just see more people entering the portal at random times after spring ball, after the season ends. You can just make your roster good in a day. It takes these 24 hours, couple calls to make your roster good, especially new coaches coming in new teams. I mean, that's probably their way to get players as soon as to win now. I mean, you're not going to have the recruits right away because it takes a couple of years to get the recruiting going, but you can win now with transfers. Yeah,
I like the transfer portal. Obviously, it does have its setbacks and its cons, but for the most part, I think that I don't want to say the addition of the transfer portal because it's been there, but the kind of relaxation of the rules and the strictness of the transfer portal has been pretty good for college football. It's also making, like Nick said, college football is more of a year-round thing now. There's a lot more to talk about. For people like us, there's a lot more to report on and talk about throughout the offseason as well. So that makes it more entertaining, kind of like from a business standpoint. But that being said, I do think that they could reinforce a little bit of those old restrictions a little bit more. As Braden pointed out, there are some players that, they're transferring a lot, and really it's hurting them more than anyone else.
I mean, yeah, their draft stock, if they want any chance of going pro, or just in general, if you transfer a third time, the opposing coach is just going to see you as not a hard worker. Mm-hmm. Even if you are, and there's just someone that's better than you, that just looks, if you transfer one time because Bryce Young's a guy starting ahead of you, that makes sense. But you transfer because, I don't know, some random quarterback for North Texas or something is transferred at the same time as you. And then
And yeah, obviously we know college athletes are hard workers, but when you're talking about trying to make it to the next level, it's really hard to sit there and make an argument for yourself being a hard worker when you've left a situation like Braden said 2 or maybe even 3 times in some cases. So, but all around, I think we can agree that as far as entertainment wise, the transfer portal has been great. Obviously, and transferring, don't get me wrong, is a great idea for some people. It's worked out great for some people. Baker Mayfield, Cam Newton,
Joe Burrow.
Yeah, Joe Burrow, Caleb Williams,
Jalen
Hurts. Yeah, I mean, it is most definitely worked out for people before, especially in that quarterback position too. As we know, you only get one quarterback, so quarterbacks really.
That's where you see the most talk about movement in the portal is QBs and running backs and receivers.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So that brings us to our next question. As I mentioned a second ago, do you guys agree with me that the rules could be a little bit more strict than what they are now?
Yeah, I totally think that one or maybe even in a severe case, a second transfer is if maybe certain positions, the rules can be regulated more than others, like we're saying quarterback, positions that only have one spot on the field. But, I mean, you see players transferring 2 or 3 times over the course of their college career. It also is just not good for their mental health because then when they grow up, they're just going to have no strong connection from their 1 or 2 colleges. It's going to be you're with somewhere for 8 months and then you go somewhere else for 8 months. You go somewhere else for 8 months and you're still on the practice squad in the indoor facility and not out in the stadium.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely needs to be some sort of regulations, but I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. It's definitely with NCAA, they take forever. I mean,
it'll take longer than the football game that we're still waiting on.
Exactly. Yeah.
So who knows what's going to happen with that? I mean, I think players. I mean, if they want to transfer once or twice, that's fine. I mean, 3 times might just want to hang it up. I mean, there'll be certain instances with injuries and whatnot that we'll have to.
But it is really. It's worth noting too that there have been players that have really suffered from it. And a great example is Zach Calzada. This is a quarterback from Texas A&M that beat Alabama, in his freshman year. Next year he transfers to Auburn. Some people could think, why transfer? He could have competed with Haynes King because obviously I don't think that Haynes King is the best quarterback, as I've said before. And now Zach Calzada goes to Auburn. He was a QB3 this year. And remember, this is when he left Texas A&M where he could have been QB1. He was in a QB battle with Haynes King. Goes to Auburn, is QB3 behind Robbie Ashford and TJ Finley, and now will be playing for the University of Incarnate Word next year in a D1 FCS school. Yeah. So it's really it's like I said before, when you have players transferring multiple times like this, leaving every type of competition they have for their position, it's hurting them more than anybody else. So if the NCAA were to make rules or regulations a little bit more strict, it would benefit the players more than they think it would. So.
Yeah, a lot of the times players are making instinctful decisions because they're 19, 18, 20 years old when they're going to transfer. Decisions that, we see in the NFL, 28-year-old men with families are making decisions like that.
It's free agency.
It's free agency. These are just kids that came fresh out of Brentwood, Tennessee high school a year ago. There's no correlation in decision making.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Zach Calzada about to pass for 5,000 yards now, playing in one of the most explosive offenses in the country.
Yeah, Incarnate Word.
It works most of the time.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but was that that's where Cameron Ward played 2 years ago? Yeah, the Washington State QB, because he was really good then, and he was a highly touted transfer last offseason, and he had a pretty solid year with Washington State. So, next question we have: what could the NCAA do to reduce the number of players transferring? So, what types of regulations could they impose? What type of restrictions? What do you guys think?
I think it's just a max transfer number. I think is the easiest way to do it. And then if you transfer a second time, it's just the traditional rule. You have to sit out the year. So you transfer one time, you get a free pass. Second time, sit out a year, then you can play.
I mean, yeah, I agree, but there will be some cases where if you get, torn ACLs, those stuff have to play in. So you can probably apply for a medical transfer.
Yeah, there could be medical
there's got to be
transfers.
Exceptions, obviously, but you can't just.
Or if there's something happens to your family, like a real reason, a non-football related reason.
Something like a coach getting fired, I feel like should give you that exception. Because obviously when you recruit to the school, like you're also recruiting.
You like the coach and the coaching staff.
The coach is more than likely who brought you there.
There's been some before the transfer portal. Some players, have been getting like the transfer waivers, and then some players getting denied transfer waivers. So I'm glad at least they fixed it to where you get one free transfer. Because I remember, I think it was a tight end that was on Illinois or something. Yep. I forgot his name.
His name was Luke. I can't think of his last name though, but. He had family problems.
Or I think someone in his family either passed away or wasn't doing well, so he transferred and he couldn't play. And I was like, "What are you doing, NCAA? I mean, you're letting guys just transfer freely to another place, and they get a waiver, and then he doesn't."
Yep.
At least we had the free pass to get on the NCAA for doing something like that.
Yeah. And then I think we all are going to have the same answer here, but does transferring multiple times hurt draft stock?
Yes.
It just depends where you're going from. Like, if you're Zach Calzada and you transfer, it would be your third spot if you go off and go for 5,000 yards and then you go.
If you go up the ladder, if you go from the opposite track.
And then you can transfer again.
Yeah, I was about to say, the thing about Calzada, though, is if he goes off this year, he's going to transfer again.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
if you go.
Yeah, but I think it just, I don't know. It would look decent if you went from, say, Sunbelt school to.
Yeah.
Let's say like
something about the Big 12 or something.
An Auburn to USC or something like that.
Yeah.
Something that would you're going up the ladder instead of down the ladder.
I think what's like a good example of this is JT Daniels going from Georgia to West Virginia to now Rice. So
that's another like Zach Calzada kind of just slowly kind of. And JT was at USC first, right?
Yeah, he was
USC, Georgia, West Virginia, Rice. That is insane to think of. Like Braden said, like you're not even like really getting like a college experience at that point. Like you're just hopping around. Like he's just like Barstool touring the different college towns. Like
he's taking internships.
Yeah, exactly.
He's just Nelk making videos about college football.
Yeah, he is on a college campus tour. He's probably been to hundreds of different college bars. Like that man has just been living life. Like. But anyways, moving on. We're going to be doing our winners and our losers of the transfer portal. Let's start it off with the winners first. I think I'm going to go ahead and point out my number one winner first, and that would be Florida State. 24/7 ranked them as the number one transfer portal recruiting class. And Mike Norvell's doing a really good job getting this Florida State team ready for a huge make or break season for them next year. A lot of people are anticipating them to be top 10, even top 5, and they have a very good chance of winning the ACC next year. Florida State brought in UVA cornerback Fintrell Cypress, who is an all-ACC corner, and he has all-American expectations. They added Jaheim Bell, who is a very good tight end for South Carolina last year, and another tight end as well, along with other positions like offensive line and defensive line from schools like Miami and Texas El Paso. So,
I'll agree with you on Florida State. I think that they definitely have the best transfer, although there's a few other ones. I think Colorado and Wisconsin and LSU all have great. Those would kind of be the main ones that stand out to me with what they've brought in. They're all looking to be dangerous. Wisconsin coming off kind of a disappointment season. LSU with more of a surprise season. They have Aaron Anderson, J.K. Johnson, Zayes, just all defense. So many defensive backs going to LSU. They always call it DBU, and I think it's about to be DBU again next year. Be some big competition out in the West for us.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna stick with a new coach. I'm gonna go with Colorado, man, especially with Deion Sanders, a lot of players are buying into that. A lot of people transferring to Colorado, going to Buffaloes. I think it's gonna be. A lot of people are gonna have question marks going in. I guess it'll just have to depend how game one goes when they go play TCU. So I guess.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see how Deion does with that. But I mean, Deion already knows his quarterback gonna be. I mean, it's gonna be his son, who played good for Jackson State. So I guess we'll see how his jump goes from lower to see if he can get his draft stock up.
Yeah.
So that's a guy who can benefit from the transfer portal right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I hate to say this, but another winner I have is unfortunately Auburn.
Yeah,
our rival. Auburn absolutely stacked up their team in the transfer portal whenever Hugh Freeze came in. Hugh Freeze came in and went to work immediately. Auburn added like 3 of the best transfer portal offensive linemen in the country.
That was big for Auburn because that's supposed one of their.
Exactly. I mean, but that's the thing. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, Nick pointed out, like you can change any problem on your team like that, especially if you're a big school, like an attractive school to players. You can fix holes on your team like that so quick. Auburn, obviously, O-line was horrible last year. Go out and get 3 of the best offensive linemen in the country. They don't even have to develop them. They're already developed. They're Division I athletes. They're men.
Especially if
they're going to be good right away.
Group of 5 players is really underrated for transfer portal moves like this. Exactly. If they perform, they do their job. They're going to get looks for Power 5, and that's where they probably want to end up ultimately.
Exactly. Not only that, but they added a couple of edge rushers from the Big Ten as well that are going to be really good. So just like kind of a typical Auburn team next year, they're going to be good in the trenches. O-line, D-line are both going to be very good next year. So moving on to our losers of the transfer portal, I think I'm going to go first in this one again, and I know for a fact the Arkansas Razorbacks took a big hit in the transfer portal this offseason. I don't know if any school had more transfers than Arkansas. I may be wrong, but I know they lost 7 starters, and one of their best players on their team, defensive lineman Jordan Dominic, who had 7.5 sacks last year. They took big hits, not going to lie. Lost one of their best wide receivers and their tight end 1. It's going to be tough for the Razorbacks next year, especially in a West division of the SEC that's absolutely loaded.
Yeah, I'm going to go with South Carolina. I mean, it was kind of surprising after a good season that South Carolina had that 4 of their starters. I mean, 4 of their better starters like Jaheim Bell, Jordan Birch, Marshawn Lloyd, and Gilbert Edmond. I mean, all transferred. 2 of them transferred to Florida State. So, I mean, and then you have Spencer Rattler coming back. So, I mean, yeah, that's kind of a question mark because, I mean, do you think they want to play with Spencer Rattler? But
yeah,
we'll see how South Carolina does this upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 that kind of stand out to me as kind of surprises. Georgia had 10 transfers out right after, Stetson Bennett. A lot of their defense will be going to the draft. And then I hate to say this one, but Mississippi State has lost so many players since the death of Mike Leach. And it's hard to say that they're a loser, but I mean,
it's just an unfortunate
situation, and there's nothing that we can say about this show on this show to make it any better. It's just
I think
they just are losers in the transfer portal this year.
I think Georgia got a lot better at receiver.
Oh, for sure.
Getting Rob Thomas and Dominic Lovett. So I mean, they'll have a quarterback competition this year with Brock Vandergift and Carson Beck. So that'll be interesting to see who comes out on top for that.
Yeah, I'm surprised that there are that many transfers out though.
It kind of surprised. It's not really surprising, especially day and age. If you don't get started, if you're not starting for like 1 or 2 seasons, you're going to be out. And a lot of those guys are because Georgia starts a lot of freshmen and sophomores, so those guys are starters for
and 7th years.
And also,
those starters are there for 2 to 3 seasons. So if those freshmen aren't starting right away, they're going to be out by year 2.
Yeah, and another thing too is when you're like Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, you can pick a guy from almost any team in the country and be like, hey, we want you. And he'll be like, okay, I'll play for you. That's kind of basically what Georgia did with Dominic Lovett and Ra Thomas. I mean, those are 2 players that play for, rival teams within the conference, you're pulling teams from your own conference. They're not pulling teams from a group of 5 school, as we talked about earlier. These guys are pulling star players from teams within their own conference. So, that's just a little bit overpowered there for Georgia and other big-name teams like that, like Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama, as we said earlier. But moving on to our individual players of the transfer portal, we're going to rank our top 3 transfers of the offseason. These are individual players, and I'm kind of basing this off of the impact I think they'll have on their team next year and how excited I am to watch them play. You guys want to go top from bottom 3 to 1?
Yeah.
How's that sound? All
Sure,
right.
yeah, let's do it.
All right, I'll start with my number 3. We've been talking about him for the last couple of minutes here. It's a split. It's between Dominic Lovett and Ra Thomas because I think one of them will have a huge impact, if not both. They're going to be fantastic wide receivers for Georgia next year, and they were already very good wide receivers for their respective schools. Ra Thomas, in my opinion, was one of the most underrated wide receivers in SEC play this past season. He was great for the Bulldogs, and he's going to be great for some other Bulldogs that are going to be competing for a national championship again.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to go here. I really like this one for Wisconsin. Bryson Green from Oklahoma State to Wisconsin. He had 584 yards and 5 touchdowns over the season, which is pretty good on that team. That Oklahoma State team was just really an offense-heavy team. As we saw at the beginning of the year, they kind of started fading out in the midseason. But I really like some of the moves Wisconsin's making, and I think Bryson Green has a lot of capabilities to be really good.
Yeah, I'm going to take – let's see who I'm finding. I'm going to take Denver Harris out of Texas A&M. I know he didn't really start, but he's going to LSU, so I think that's going to be help him going to DBU. But he had a tough year. I mean, for a lot of those freshmen in that Texas A&M class, they weren't winning games, so he went out. So I think, a revitalization for him is just going to get to a better team that's going to win more games.
Yeah, I do think that Denver Harris will have an immediate impact on LSU's team. I think that he'll be all SEC. I think he'll be a really good corner next year. At my number 2 spot, I almost didn't even put this here just because it was such a given when Deion Sanders left for Colorado that Travis Hunter would follow behind. But I did put Travis Hunter here just because he's an excellent player. This is a guy that could easily be an All-American corner and should, by the time he's eligible for the NFL draft, be a first-round pick. I don't think we'll see him play both sides of the ball as much as he did when he was playing at Jackson State, but I do think that his defense is obviously, I think it's much better than his offensive ability, and he is an absolute lockdown corner who will be a stud in pass-heavy Pac-12 next season.
All right, so my number 2, I'm going to have to go Sam Hartman, Wake Forest. He's going to Notre Dame. We saw Wake Forest, we talk about them in North Carolina just being offense. Another one of these teams that just had a lot of offense, no defense. Wake Forest was no team shy of that. He has almost 13,000 career pass yards, an all-time ACC record. So he's trying to boost his draft stock, obviously, by going to Notre Dame, a school that has the potential every year to sneak into the college football playoff. And I think that that's going to be a big win for Notre Dame, especially after the somewhat disappointing season this year. I think they're going to be back on it with a strong quarterback.
Look, I think my number 2, I'm going to go with receiver, but it's going to be – I'm going to go quarterback. I'm going to go Devin Leary going to Kentucky, especially with I forgot his name. The OC coming William Cohen coming back from the Rams to Kentucky if get his career in shape. I mean, he was one of the most hyped quarterbacks out of last year. I mean, and then he got hurt. So, I mean, I guess that hype will be coming back soon, especially they'll probably get the Will Levis hype I think he'll probably end up better as a college quarterback than Will Levis obviously was.
Oh, yeah, I think.
Especially with better coaching. So I think that's going to be huge for Kentucky.
Yeah, that's really big for Kentucky. Devin Leary is a quarterback that going into last season, I saw in mocks as a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
Devin Leary has NFL potential. This is a guy that's appealing to NFL scouts, and rightfully so. I think he's a very good quarterback. And in his scenario, I think it was a very smart decision for him to transfer from NC State. I thought that the Wolfpack did a very bad job of getting him weapons this year. It did not feel like he had the O-line. He didn't have the receivers. He didn't have the tight ends. NC State did not have the offensive firepower that a lot of people thought they would with Devin Leary, and I do not think it was his fault. He didn't play fantastic this season, but he definitely did not have the help. And then, of course, unfortunate injury for him. That set him out for a lot of the year. But I think a very smart business decision for Devin Leary because obviously he knows, he is attractive to NFL scouts. And he's going
to be coached by coaches that are just in the NFL.
Exactly. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Devin Leary work his way back up mock drafts. Maybe be like, if he plays good at Kentucky, I could even see him being a late first, early second.
Yeah, I mean, there's not going to be many quarterbacks next year. I mean, Caleb Williams is going to be everybody trying to get him. I mean, I think he could be number 2 quarterback, number 3, depending on what Spencer Rattler does and what other quarterbacks around him do.
Yeah. My number 1 is going to be your number 2. I think Travis Hunter, Jackson State, Colorado. He was the number 1 player in his recruiting class, and he had a really good year last year. And like you said, Pac-12 was very, very pass-heavy. I think that is just going to shine for him. And with the transfer to Colorado, there's going to be a lot of energy around football back there. Oof, nice. That was brutal. Maybe cut that one out. But there's a lot of energy around football back in Colorado. Colorado's been kind of on and off the last 10 years with some really good teams and some really bad teams, and I think that he's going to bring it back. Obviously, Deion Sanders has a lot to do with that, but Travis Hunter will be a household name in Boulder and Denver.
I'm going to go with Sam Hartman because I think he's going to get that Notre Dame team to the next level from where they were last year. I mean, getting the number 1 quarterback out of the transfer portal, I mean, he was explosive with Wake Forest. He's going to add that element to Notre Dame to make them from like where they were last year. I mean, they were like an 8-win team that can get them up to a 9 or that right there can just adds like 1 or 2 more wins to their team right there. They can maybe even 3 wins with just better quarterback play, better decision making, and can put up numbers. I mean, it's going to be tough. They're going to have to get load back up on tight end and receiver because with the loss of Michael Meyer, that's going to be a big loss for Notre Dame. But I think a better quarterback is certainly going to help them.
Yeah, and my number 1 likewise is Sam Hartman as well. I think obviously losing Tommy Rees, losing Meyer is going to hurt them, but I am pretty confident in what Marcus Freeman is building at Notre Dame, and I do think that Sam Hartman will be better at Notre Dame, and he will obviously get the attention of more NFL scouts at Notre Dame than he would at Wake Forest. Yep. As Braden mentioned earlier, this is a Notre Dame team that's always a threat to sneak into the playoffs. Although they don't often win national championships, they are competing for national championships. Every season you can go into the season with Notre Dame as a team that can win a national championship. So I think that a smart move by Sam Hartman to transfer out of Wake to go to Notre Dame. He did a lot for Wake Forest, and now he can kind of focus on himself a little bit.
Yeah.
Moving on to our last topic for the transfer portal, we have our most underrated transfer of the offseason. And I have a pretty spicy one here. I like Hudson Card transferring from Texas to Purdue. Hudson Card is a little bit underrated as a quarterback. I liked what I saw from him at Texas during the absence of Quinn Ewers. Obviously, this is a situation where he just has no chance because Quinn Ewers is a generational talent. He kind of had to get out of there. This is a Purdue team that needed him too with the loss of Coach Jeff Brom. I think that Hudson Card will be pretty good at Purdue, and Purdue could compete in that division of the Big Ten again and potentially get back to the Big Ten championship game like they did this year. Hudson Card, another thing worth noting is I thought he played very well against Alabama, even on a bum ankle. He was out there on one leg after Ewers went down and played pretty solid.
Yeah, I got a couple in mind. I'm going to name like 2 or 3. I think Tanner Mordecai is going to do good things at Wisconsin. I mean, he had some games where he's putting up like 600 yards at SMU. I think going to Wisconsin, he's going to be working with Phil Longo, who worked with Drake May last year. So I think Wisconsin is going to leave the ground and pound behind. And, I mean, Wisconsin fans are going to be looking to not be watching 20 to 16 games. They're not watching like
exactly.
40,
that's a
35-point games. And that's one of my underrated moves. Yeah. Another one would be Dante Thornton going from Oregon to Tennessee. I mean, I feel like he's a speedy guy. I think he could have the Jalen Hyatt effect, maybe. I mean, especially if he was a vertical threat for Bo Nix last year, so he would. I feel like him and Joe Milton's arm is incredible, so I think he can get behind defenses and make big plays. And my last one is let me find him. I had him. It was A.D. Mitchell going from Georgia to Texas.
Yeah,
his impact that he had in national champ. I mean, he already had 2 touchdowns and one in the championship, one in the. And he barely played last year, and I feel like Quinn Ewers. I mean, you still have Xavier Worthy, and you still have Winnington.
Yeah, Trey Sanders going to TCU as well.
Yeah, that's a big one. So I think A.D. Mitchell is going to be able to get going with Quinn Ewers because I mean he's going to have a better quarterback. I mean, arm wise. So
yeah, TCU is going to be better next year. Which as much as we're probably going to hate on them again in the fall. And be like, TCU, don't worry about them. They're probably going to show up in the playoffs again somehow. So
who did they pick up any quarterbacks?
TCU. I mean, they still have viewers.
Texas.
Not you. Texas. Wrong team.
TCU will still be good then.
Yeah, TCU will still.
I meant to say Duggan, but not whatever. You were saying Ewers earlier. All right, so my most underrated pick is the same as the first one you mentioned, Tanner Mordecai. I really liked him for SMU. SMU also has had some crazy games over the last year with a lot of offense. Wisconsin, like you said, offense was a major problem for them and what their fans are used to, which is Big 12 or Big 10 championship appearances and Rose Bowls. This was not their year in the football department, but I think they'll be back again strong. Look for possible. I mean, it's not that hard to win the East and the Big Ten.
Yep.
So the West.
And what you're going, I mean, what I just realized is, Wisconsin's one of their best running backs, Braden Allen, is still on the roster.
Yeah, exactly, and he's one of the best running backs in the country.
Especially, I feel like he's going to add a passing attack that he didn't have at Wisconsin last year. I feel like he could be like a Michael Carter.
Dual threat.
We could
almost like Bijan
Wisconsin
Robinson.
is weirdly one of the most exciting teams going into next year with Fickle coming in and Tanner Mordecai and Braylon Allen returning.
And they'll play in a friendlier division. I mean, the Big Ten West is much easier.
Yeah, it's much easier to come across.
Yeah, I mean, their really only competition is Iowa and
Iowa can
Purdue.
sometimes be really good.
Yeah, and Iowa did get Cade McNamara.
Yeah,
so that's another transfer worth talking about. You know, and they have the contract clause where their offensive coordinator Ferentz has to score. They have to average 25 points per game for him to keep his job because of how bad their offense has been this past season.
Didn't Graham Mertz go to Florida?
Yes, Graham Mertz did go to Florida. That's weird to think about.
You're just going to turn on the TV in August and you're just going to see a guy and be like, hey, he was on Wisconsin last year. I mean, it's just crazy what the transfer portal does. It's awesome.
I know there's so many transfers that we talked about and that we're going to see on TV in September that just went completely under our radar.
Yeah, transfer portal made the college football season August to January to now year round, which just makes it even better for a ton of news outlets across the country.
Yeah, exactly. And diehard college football fans like us. So, all right, changing topics here. We're going to hop into the coaching carousel. First, we're going to talk about our very own University of Alabama and our coaching changes. We're going to talk a little bit about Tommy Rees first. How do you guys feel about the Tommy Rees hire from Notre Dame?
I like it. I think that he has some good experience. Obviously, he's a former quarterback, and I think the main thing that just needed to happen was change. There was a mental thing in Alabama fans and probably in the locker room too about Bill O'Brien. Everyone wanted him to get out, even after last year. Not after the 2021 season, people thought that he blew a couple games this year. Each game we lost were all due to questionable calls that he made throughout the entire game. And I think that it's a win. We don't really know how Rees is going to do, what our offense is going to look like, or who our quarterback's even going to be yet. But I think that there's a good chance that he's going to come up with a good offense and put us back on the right foot.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying. I think it's just going to add different play style of offense. I mean, I think we're going to go a little bit away from the spread, what we were running, just airing it out. I think we'll get more play action, bring some of the play action back, different sets. I think it'll fit both quarterbacks that we have in right now. I think it's still going to be exciting offense. I think we'll still put up the points we did in years past, but it's just going to be more.
It's going to be a different style of offense than we're used to. And we also are going to have Ja'Cory Brooks and a lot of receivers that we saw last year, Isaiah Bond.
Jermaine
Burton, yeah.
And we'll use better with the tight end. Like, he did a really good job at Notre Dame using the tight ends really well. I mean, you see that with the top first-round pick at a tight end with Michael Mayer. So, I mean, Alabama got a transfer tight end, C.J. Jeffrey from Maryland, so I think he'll be used very well.
I kind of agree with Nick. Like, I think it's going to be great utilizing the tight ends more. I think we're going to be a little bit – I'm not saying we'll be completely ground and pound, but I think we'll be a little bit more ground and pound. Expect a good bit of play action, especially if Milroe is going to be the quarterback. Yeah. That's what's great about this offensive coordinator. He's young, and we're either going to be starting Jalen Milroe, who is slightly experienced but is much more of a runner than an accurate pinpoint passer. And then we have Ty Simpson, who we don't really know too much about. So a great thing about
run a 2019 or 2018 offense.
Exactly.
Like, put Milroe in there, put Simpson in there in certain situations at the beginning of the year.
I think that's kind of what it'll come down to, unless one QB just blows the other way in the spring. Yeah. I think that Ree's coaching style and his offensive game plan can kind of cater to both quarterbacks. Yeah. So I think that it's a great experiment for Alabama. I think that Tommy Rees will be able to find success at Alabama. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, we have Kevin Steele. I like this one more than the Tommy Rees hire, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a guy who's just experienced, who's coached. I mean, everybody was hating they didn't do a good job in Miami. Miami was just a dumpster fire last year, but you can't really fix that. I mean, it's going to take Mario Cristobal a couple years, but I think Kevin Steele knows what he's doing. I mean,
Miami's defense last year was their strongest point. I mean, they had a game where someone had 4 interceptions, right?
Yeah. I think what's also crazy is look what Kevin Steele did to 2019 LSU. I mean, he held them to like 25 or 23 points, something like that, and in the 20s, and no team was doing that to that offense. It just what he's done in the SEC. He knows Saban, so he knows what Saban expects, and he's just gonna bring back that Bama mindset on defense. That it wasn't really missing. It was just like at times it would be
sloppy. There's not going to be sloppy plays. That's just not going to happen.
It'd be more clean. You're gonna have lapses on defense,
players just not reading their coverage.
Just have no clue what's going on the field. We saw that a few times this year. Another thing I like about Kevin Steele a lot is that he's going to utilize the edge rushers, which I feel, although we had Dallas Turner and Will Anderson, we didn't really build our defense around that edge pressure as much as we should have, especially having Will Anderson, who's probably one of the best edge rushers I've ever seen play on a college football field.
I agree. I feel like Dallas Turner is going to be able to have similar impact.
So I don't know if you guys did you guys see the stat about so Dallas Turner last season dropped back into coverage 92 times. In 2019, Kevin Steele only dropped all of his edge rushers into coverage a grand total of 26 times at all.
That would be crazy.
So we are going to be getting a different Dallas Turner next year. Thankfully, we're going to be utilizing the amazing speed and strength of Dallas Turner and his pursuit of getting to the quarterback. And it's not crazy to say that Dallas Turner could go for close to 10 sacks next year or even hit that mark. So fantastic hire on the defensive side of the ball. Kevin Steele is already a proven guy, as we said. It's kind of like the opposite of Tommy Rees. Tommy Rees, we're taking a little bit of a chance getting a young guy who hasn't really coached a great offense, but there are things to like about his game plan. Kevin Steele is a proven guy who has coached great teams before.
Yeah.
So, all right, we're going to be moving into our individual best coordinator coaching hires for both assistants and head coaching. We're going to start with the offensive coordinators. My personal favorite is Garrett Riley going from TCU to Clemson. That's a great job by Clemson, being able to pry Garrett Riley from TCU. A lot of people kind of expected Garrett Riley could be in contention for a head coaching job after the fantastic season that he had with the Horned Frogs. But I think Clemson will be great with him. Cade Klubnik gets a new offensive coordinator. Clemson obviously needs an offensive revamp after that disastrous offense they had last season. So I think Garrett Riley was just the perfect hire for them.
Yeah, I have 2 offensive coordinators I like our Kendall Browse going from Arkansas to TCU. I mean, TCU just reloads another solid. I mean, Arkansas fans hated Kendall Browse, but I mean, he's still. I mean, they didn't really have the quarterbacks to help him out. So I mean, he's going to go into TCU with a loaded just transfers all left and right to look at. I mean, he's going to have a ton of Alabama transfers. So I mean, excited to see what TCU does. Then my other one is going to be Phil Longo going from North Carolina to Wisconsin, which is very interesting. And I think he just adds an explosive effect to Wisconsin that they've never seen in years. Yeah, they'll probably have to turn on SEC football or ACC football just to be able to see what that is like. So, be interested to see what Wisconsin does in the Big Ten. I mean, see how their quarterbacks do and to see how many points they're putting up.
Yeah, for me, for offensive coordinator, yeah, there's all those talks, but I mean, in the culture of this campus, we obviously don't know how it is at other campuses, what people talk about. It was from the Tennessee week, it just seemed like Bill O'Brien had to go. And no matter who it was, just changed. And I think this is a perfect change. Tommy Rees, like you guys said, maybe not the most experienced guy, but he's young. He's going to have a different style of offense that the SEC in general probably isn't used to. Not just Alabama fans seeing, balls get aired out 60 yards downfield for 3-play drives. But, I mean, there's still going to be that aspect's still going to be there. It's just going to be there less. And I think that that's going to be good, and teams aren't going to really know how to initially defend us at the beginning of the year. As much as I do like the Ole Miss hire too, that's defense. My bad. We're still on offense. Yeah.
Save it for the
next part. Yeah.
He is so hyped for this topic. He just couldn't contain himself anymore.
I really am not the biggest fan of Pete, but
I mean that's a sneak peek to my. I mean that's probably one of the top DC hires to get is Pete Golding going from Alabama to Ole Miss. From where Ole Miss was statistically, I know Alabama fans will disagree, but in my opinion, I think Ole Miss was like top 80, top 90 defense.
It will help them out a lot. As much as we thought he was bad, he is actually a very good defensive.
Ole Miss will probably move from like top 80 to probably like top 30, top 20, and then that's the reason why they cannot move up the ladder in the SEC. I mean, they're like 8-4, 9-3 team, 10-2, but they cannot move up that just a little more echelon of defense to get their team to be contending for SEC championships. I mean, it's going to help them once the 12-team playoff comes on because if they have a 9-3, 10-2 season and they'll have a better defense, they'll be able to.
Yeah, and their offense has never been a problem. Ole Miss always has a strong offense.
So I think we might all have the same.
And he's a really good recruiter. I mean, he got so much talent, and Ole Miss has been lacking in recruiting lately, recruiting high school prospects in particular. So that will really help their high school recruiting out a ton.
Yeah. So that basically clears up who we think is the best defensive coordinator hire. I thought that was a very good hire by Ole Miss. And, a lot of people thought it was about time for Alabama to part ways with Pete. I don't know. I was on the fence about it just because I like the stability in assistant coaches, or I like the longevity from having an assistant coach for a long time. As an Alabama fan, it's starting to get kind of tiring, going into – it feels like almost every season or every other season with a different coordinator.
And when Pete Golding did a good – people are going to be, very – if he did good or not here. I mean, I still think he did a good job here. I mean, he recruited his butt off. He got some great talent. I mean, can't thank him enough. I mean, Will Anderson, guys like that, he got him here with the help of Nick Saban, of course. So it's just Good luck in Ole Miss, Pete.
Best head coaching hire, we might have some variety here. I'm going to kick us off first with Luke Fickell of Wisconsin. I've already mentioned before, I feel like we could make a whole episode previewing Wisconsin for next year. They're weirdly a really, really exciting team going into next year.
Yeah, they're probably favored to win the Big Ten West.
Yeah, so hats off to them. I think Luke Fickell is an absolute home run of a hire. I think he is probably the best candidate out there to be any college coach.
It was really a shock to see when you open your phone and see that during the College Football World, because Cincinnati's in the Big 12 next season. So
I was surprised by it. Yeah, I didn't think he'd leave.
They're in the Power 5 now. Cincinnati is. So it's kind of just odd that he just left.
Money.
Yeah, I guess. Money.
Yeah. So my best head coach hire, prime time, Deion Sanders. Every day I scroll through my phone, I see something about Deion Sanders, and I think that Jackson State, he didn't really get the chance to show off how good of a coach he is. I think a lot of people, like you said, they buy into the things that he has to say because of how successful of an athlete he was. A lot of people, maybe he's not the most traditional head coach that people are used to, but I think that, where he's flashy, and normally head coaches are just guys that chill on the sidelines, aren't super personality driven, but Deion Sanders, one of the best personalities in sports, and I think that he's going to do a great job. And in a few years, maybe even this year, we see Colorado have a bowl appearance, and then 2-3 years, maybe that Pac-12 is theirs.
Yeah, I'm going to take it down to the Plains. I'm going to give Auburn some credit. I think Hugh Freeze, he was just a winning coach at Liberty, winning coach at Ole Miss, what he did. The morals may have not been there, but he'll get Auburn back to winning. They haven't seen winning in some years, so I think he'll come in there and win. He'll get better style of offense. The fans are not going to be up his butt right away. He's going to have more time to figure it out. Okay, but his leash won't be as short. I think he'll get. He knows the landscape of the SEC. He knows what it takes to win. So I think he's Auburn just made a safe hire there.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's high ceiling, low floor. He's not going to be any worse than Brian Harsin.
Yeah.
There's no way he'll even be as close to as bad as Brian Harsin was.
Yeah, I don't know if he has the ability to take Auburn to an SEC championship, but it's not impossible that he takes them to be a top 15 team.
Yeah. SEC West.
A competitive SEC West team.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to put it. Moving on to our most underrated hire. Now, this can be assistant coach or head coach. I'm going with Alabama's very own Charles Kelly leaving for Colorado. Now, Charles Kelly is going to be the defensive coordinator for Colorado next season under Deion Sanders. He was the Alabama safeties coach and has been for quite some time. He's coached NFL draft picks like Deontay Thompson, Xavier McKinney, Jordan Battle, who will be a draft pick, Brian Branch, who will also be a high draft pick, and Malachi Moore as well. He is also the number one recruiter ranked by 24/7 Sports, and has recruited Caleb Downs, and was also listed as the primary recruiter for none other than Will Anderson. So I think this is an absolute splash for Colorado, a team that's already super appealing to recruits. Just gets even more appealing when they get the number one recruiter in the country in Charles Kelly. I think he'll be a fantastic defensive coordinator as well. I think Alabama has done a really good job of producing safeties, and I don't remember the last time Alabama struggled at the safety position or had a hole at the safety position. Feels like there's always been two guys on their team that have been elite safeties.
My most underrated hire is going to be Brian Ward going to Arizona State from Wazoo. I think that Wazoo, despite their kind of just on and offness over the last few years, their defense has been somewhat consistent. And I think Arizona State, with how bad they've been, it's going to help them out a lot. Arizona State has been in a hole for 4 or 5 years now, where they just have. Both Arizona schools have just not. It's been all basketball out in the desert, and
they got another young head coach in Kenny Dillingham from.
Look out for ASU in a few years. Maybe Cheez-It Bowl.
Yeah, that's right.
Cheez-It Bowl bound.
I mean, my most underrated, I've already said, is going to be Kendall Briles going to TCU, I think.
Yeah.
He's just going to bring TCU, the Big 12, there's going to have a ton more teams in there. It's going to be interesting to see how UCF, Houston, they all rack up. BYU, I see how they all rack up before. Once Texas and Oklahoma depart, I think TCU might be the king of that conference. Yeah. Especially what Sonny Dykes is doing and Kendall Briles.
That team next year is going to be stacked.
Yeah, they have tons of transfers. I don't know who they have at quarterback for next year. I think it's probably one of the guys that got hurt. But I think they're going to be in contention to win the Big 12 again and get to a New Year's Six Bowl, or maybe even somehow end up in the playoffs again. We'll see.
Yeah. So as for Braden, can we get an official prediction? Arizona State will be in the Cheez-It Bowl in a few years.
I think in a few years, Arizona State has a good chance of playing in the Cheez-It Bowl.
Any Sun Devil fans listening, look out for your team in the Cheez-It Bowl.
Yeah, they might be holding that Cheez-It trophy with a full bowl of Cheez-Its.
They might be staying in the hotel room.
Yeah, in the Cheez-It hotel room. Yeah.
The Cheez-It Hotel in Glendale, Arizona.
Hang the banner. Go ahead and hang the banner. Moving on to our who we think will be the best team with a first-year head coach. I think we'll see some similar answers here. I'm going with Wisconsin. Tanner Mordecai at QB with Braylon Allen returning. They look good at offense. And we've talked about Wisconsin a lot this episode, and rightfully so. They deserve it. They've been arguably the biggest winner of the entire college football offseason.
Yeah. I'd agree with you.
Yeah.
It just comes down to the easiest division. Big Ten West, you're not going to be going up against Ohio State, Penn State, you're in Michigan. You're going to have Iowa, Purdue, Northwestern. You're going to have much easier.
Yeah, we've seen Wisconsin be the head of that conference pretty much our entire lives. I think they're going to go right back to it. If not next year, right after. I think next year they're going to have a great team. They're going to have minimum 8-win team, I think.
Yeah, just what the transfer portal does.
Yep.
Take a quarterback.
Take a coach, and
take
everyone else.
Yeah. So look out for the Badgers next year. Now, on the opposite side of that, what coaches will be on the hot seat going into next year? These are coaches we think, they have a bad start. I'm talking 1-3. Really, within the first 4 or 5 weeks, if they have a bad start, they will almost guaranteed to be fired. I'm going to start us off with maybe a hot take to either of y'all, but I'm going to start us off with Billy Napier at Florida.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I think
his leash was so – Florida fans were calling him to be fired after year one. I was like,
yeah, exactly.
You got to give it time. He's bringing in the top 5, top 10 recruiting class. It's going to be interesting to see what they do at quarterback. I know they have Graham Mertz. They got that guy from Jack Miller from Ohio State. They have some guys. They got tons of defensive players. And, they had so many DBs that they got. So, Florida, they've had some underrated DBs come through the past couple of years, so hopefully they can get back.
Yeah, this year is a total disappointment. Losing to Vanderbilt on the road, it doesn't get much worse than that in SEC fans' minds.
They beat the Pac-12 champ, too, at the start of the year. So
and they'll open – that's who they'll
Utah.
open.
Yeah. So they really started themselves this year with such high expectations, and then that's honestly why so many fans were probably calling for Billy Napier, is just because they saw what the team was capable of.
They took down a number 7 team.
Yeah, exactly.
And the current Pac-12 championships, they won the Rose Bowl the year before, I want to say.
Yeah, Utah.
Yeah, so they're coming off.
No, they had lost. They lost to Ohio State.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. But
they competed, and it was
back-to-back Rose Bowl team.
Yeah.
Utah.
Back-to-back Pac-12 champion.
Yeah, very credible team. But I would say he's on the hot seat, but I wouldn't say it's on absolute fire. Definitely not as much fire as Brent Venables.
Oh yeah,
his seat is
storming already.
Yeah.
It's
steaming.
It's as hot as when you leave your seat warmer on when you go to fill up your gas tank. You sit back down and.
Yeah, that's.
That seat is on fire.
Coming off a 6-6 year, Oklahoma fans. I think Dylan Gabriel I'm pretty sure he's back. So they do have some pieces returning, but. He's going to have to win games fast. He's going to have a good start to the season. Cannot drop games early.
Can't drop more than – I say if he drops 2 of his first 6.
Yeah, he might be in trouble.
That would be.
Yeah,
He
I
needs-
agree. If
They start off 4
if it's
and
a
2.
4-2 Oklahoma team, then he's definitely going to get
Unless
the
they
pink slip.
unless they beat Texas, and
Yeah,
Then
if they
all
beat
is
Texas,
forgiven. It's like Auburn with the Iron Bowl.
I mean,
usually that beat Texas. I think Jimbo Fisher, his seat is not fully warm, but it's getting there. It's like medium.
Yeah.
he just
But
turned
it's
on a
just-
seat warmer.
Yeah, he just
I
turned
feel
it
like
on.
that's an obvious
But it's
one.
because
That's
the
I had
buyout
this as well.
situation is so big that I don't know if
It's
and-
hard for his seat to get that hot.
Yeah,
when
it just depends. I feel like they'll be better this year though.
I do think so too. But that being said, I don't know how many more seasons Texas A&M fans can handle going 8-4 or worse as they did this year.
Just have to ask all those big oil donors.
Yeah. So exiting out of the SEC talk a little bit here, I'm gonna bring up Dino Babers from Syracuse. This is a Syracuse team that actually kind of had high expectations during the early parts of the season last year. I think they started 5-0 or 6-0. Competed with Clemson, probably should have won that game too. It was a very good game. And not only that, but Dino brought in the worst ACC recruiting class, which is honestly kind of surprising for a Syracuse team that seemed to be on the rise.
I don't think it's really surprising because he wants to go play up in Syracuse.
That is a great point.
Yeah.
You're playing in a dome at least,
fantastic
but
point.
I don't think
you're
he's-
getting out recruited by like Boston
Yeah,
College.
that's true.
Really?
I don't think.
You know.
And I'd rather play at Boston College than in Syracuse. I mean, if Syracuse decided to relocate to Brooklyn or something, they would maybe get a better
I think
recruiting class.
I wouldn't really.
Relocate the city of
I don't really know
Syracuse.
where
Like,
Syracuse could do much better than what Dino's done. I think he's done a solid job there. I mean, he's had them on the map. I mean, not much better they could do for Syracuse.
I mean, at the beginning of the year, we were talking about Syracuse as contenders for the ACC, and then they kind of just fell off. But they played Clemson well. It's just not the most appealing place as a
That's right.
player to play at.
yeah, and then the last name I'll throw out there because we got to wrap this up pretty quick. Neil Brown from West Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
Neil
on
Brown's
fire.
good.
It is on fire. That's a West Virginia team. If they drop, obviously West Virginia fans don't have super high expectations, but it's a West Virginia team that, like, if they drop, I don't know, say 2 of their first 4, maybe 2 of their first 5, yeah, he's probably out. They have a huge game against Pitt to open the season in the backyard brawl. That'll be a
If they
great
get
rivalry.
blown
game.
out in that game, I'd say it's over.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. Now, transitioning into our last topic, obviously we can't do the pick'em to end our shows anymore. So we've decided we're going to do random rankings. So this week's rankings will be our top 3 most exciting players to watch last season. As I said, this will replace our pick'em. So we'll go around and do this kind of like rapid fire style. We'll go pretty fast here, starting from 3, going down to 1. At number 3, I have Marvin Harrison Jr. of Ohio State. Awesome player, awesome highlights, had some all-time highlights that will be remembered forever with some of the catches he's had.
Got to give it to my boy Max Duggan. I think at the beginning of the year, I was just so hated on TCU, but by the end of the year, I grew to really enjoy watching Max Duggan play, and I love that he just gives it all out, leaves it all out on the field. That game against Kansas State just really made me become a Max Duggan fan. I mean, you're sitting in the end zone, bleeding, collapsing because you just drove your team down the field.
90 yards running.
90 yards, pretty much all by yourself.
Yeah.
In 50 seconds, what was it? In a very short amount of time. I mean, not that many players are willing to even make that effort for their team or themselves, push themselves that hard. Players like that, it's just not every player has that character trait, and Max Duggan does, and it made it very fun to watch.
I'm going to keep it with the TCU Horned Frogs also, but I'm going Caden Johnson, who's probably the number 1 wide receiver.
That's your guy. That was
my
this
guy,
year.
man. That was my player of the week. He balled out. He balled out this year. I mean, he was nobody. Now, once TCU got going, he got going, and he has all the attributes to be. I mean, he's got everything.
Yeah,
he's like an NFL ready receiver.
He'll be a first-round pick for sure. He could be top 10. Moving on to number 2, I've got the Heisman winner himself, Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams was absolutely electric for USC this year. One of the better college QBs that we've seen in the past years. I think Caleb Williams will be great again next year, and hopefully USC can get the defense to kind of make them more of an actual championship contender.
My number 2, I'm going to go back to Marvin Harrison here. Just an absolutely electric receiver, pretty much unarguably the best receiver in college football last year. I mean, some people can maybe say Jalen Hyatt. Nah, it's Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison is just is a very complete. Yeah, he can make insane catches. He's fast. He has good moves. He runs good routes. He just he checks all the boxes. And I mean, he made so many plays that put Ohio State in that contention against Georgia. And even though he got hurt at the end of the game, but I mean,
he'll be back.
He'll be back, and he'll be. I mean, Ohio State's going to be dangerous even without Stroud.
We go with Caleb Williams. It's just incredible. He's must-see TV every time we turn it on. It's going to be must-see TV this upcoming season. Teams are going to be tanking for him. It's going to be tanked for Caleb next year.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, he's just insane. What he does, his arm, his legs, it's just insane. He's like a Patrick Mahomes Jr.
Yeah, for sure. And number 1, we might have some similar answers here being students at the University of Alabama. I got to pay tribute to my boy Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young is one of the best college football quarterbacks I've ever laid eyes on. I think he's the most talented Alabama QB of all time. That's obviously controversial. There are several people that don't believe that, but I stand by that. Bryce Young, any of the other quarterbacks we've had in recent memory would have gone 7-5 or 8-4 with this team. Bryce Young absolutely willed us to some of the games, and even people will forget games like LSU that we lost. Bryce Young played out of his mind and made insane plays that no other college quarterback in the country could make except maybe Caleb Williams.
That second half against LSU was just incredible.
Exactly.
I mean, the first half was not very
And think
good.
about the Texas game too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, as much as I want to put Caleb Williams in this list, I think he needs to grow a little bit in his character for him to make me one of my top 3 players in college football. And I'm going to stick with the superhuman that we breeded on our own here in Tuscaloosa, Bryce Young. I mean, just over the last 2 years even. I mean, this year, kind of a down year with the injury, played through it a lot. But, it's just so exciting. Every time he steps on the field, magic is pretty much guaranteed to happen. There's always something you're going to see. Some blitz thrown at him, he's going to find his way out. It looks like he's going to get sacked for 20 yards, runs it in the end zone. I mean, that happens pretty much every game. And, he's one of those players that, he's probably going to go first overall as long as the Bears trade their pick, which they should.
They should.
The argument against Bryce Young not being the best Alabama quarterback, he never won a national championship. And, he was one play away from it last year, and he was one play away from it this year probably with the Tennessee game, and we should just ran the ball. But that's why we got a new OC.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, Bryce Young embodies everything, and he's really the Steph Curry of football. You can
Is it because he's short?
No, it's just because he just is electric. Everybody's must-see TV every time he's on.
Yeah.
Catch and shoot. He's really a point guard. Everybody calls him a point guard.
Yeah, he's insane.
So, with that being said, though, I think this was a great episode here. I think it might be our longest episode we've ever recorded, but we covered a lot of topics today. We went over transfer portal, coaching carousel, and ended it with our random rankings. So, with that being said, I'm Caden Johnson.
I'm Braden Freedman.
I'm Nicholas Elliot.
And this is the 4th and Goal podcast signing off.